Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something lots of organizations struggle with. They see Agile working well for maybe one or two product teams, and they think, great, let's roll this out everywhere. But the thing is, that promise of speed, efficiency, better value, it often doesn't quite pan out. Sometimes it even, creates more problems.
That's exactly it. We're talking about scaling Agile, and really it's about expanding that whole Agile mindset, the focus on iterative value, customer feedback, plus the practices and tools that work for product and service management, and try and make them work, more broadly across more teams or the whole company.
Right. Okay. Let's unpack that a bit, because as soon as you start looking into how to scale Agile, you're hit with this wall of frameworks, safe, less, nexus. It feels endless sometimes.
It really does, and it's super important to understand they're not all the same. You can't just grab one off the shelf and expect it to fit your organization perfectly. That's a recipe for, trouble.
Yeah. And some things people call scaling frameworks, like the Spotify model. That wasn't even meant to be a framework you just copy, was it?
Exactly right. It was just how they worked at a point in time. So, okay, why do organizations even feel this pressure to scale their Agile product and service approaches?
Good question.
Well, one big driver is often this desire for, let's say, uniformity, consistency across different product teams, alignment.
Okay, I can see that. But doesn't that sometimes come from a more traditional, maybe project management kind of thinking, like a waterfall mindset, where standardization feels like the path to efficiency?
Precisely. And look, for straightforward projects with clear endpoints, that standardization approach, that project management style can work really well. It's optimized for predictability.
But product management with Agile is different, isn't it? It's about ongoing adaptation, learning, responding to change.
Totally different. In product and service management, you're dealing with constant evolution. Customer needs shift, markets change. That kind of rigid standardization can actually kill the flexibility and innovation that Agile is supposed to enable for your products.
So while leaders understandably want alignment, maybe seeing those company-wide benefits from investing in Agile for their product portfolio, forcing every product team into the exact same mold, probably not the best idea.
Definitely not. At different products, different services, different teams, they often need different approaches, even if they share the same core Agile values focused on delivering value.
What's another reason people try to scale?
Well, there's often this hope, this belief that scaling Agile will somehow magically fix all the existing problems in how products and services get delivered. Like it'll just smooth everything out.
Ah, the silver bullet idea.
Exactly. And look, scaling can lead to better outcomes, faster value, happier customers if it's done thoughtfully. But it's absolutely not guaranteed.
Right. And if you do it badly or too soon.
It can make things much, much worse. It can amplify the existing issues you already have within your product teams or delivery process.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into misconceptions. What are some common ones you see around scaling Agile for product management? I hear one a lot. The idea that every team, everywhere in the company has to become an Agile team.
Yeah, that's a big one. And it's just not true. It really depends on the kind of work being done to deliver value. Some work, maybe more operational or predictable stuff, might actually fit a waterfall project management model better. And that's okay.
So it's not Agile or nothing.
Not at all. Even teams using waterfall can benefit hugely from lean principles, focusing on value, eliminating waste, continuous improvement. They can inspect and adapt their processes without needing a full switch to Scrum or Kanban for managing their work.
Okay, that makes sense. What's another misconception?
The idea that all your Agile product teams need to use the exact same practices. Like, if one team does daily stand-ups and uses story points, all teams must do that.
Ah, right. The cookie cutter approach again.
But the practices should really be tailored to the product or service being managed. A software product team might need continuous integration, right? But maybe a marketing team managing campaigns using Agile principles wouldn't find that relevant.
Sure. The core ideas iteration, feedback might apply, but the specific tools or ceremonies could differ based on the product context.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all toolkit when you're managing different kinds of products or services.
Okay. And one more. You mentioned communication earlier. Is scaling always the best fix for, say, communication breakdowns between product teams?
Well, this one's interesting because, yes, in theory, scaling can create structures that help product teams communicate better. It can break down silos, improve coordination on dependencies between products.
But there's a but, isn't there?
There's a big but. If the individual product teams aren't already pretty mature in their agile ways, if they have poor communication habits within the team, or if there's underlying dysfunction,
Then scaling just connects dysfunctional teams.
pretty much, you suddenly give those teams with communication issues direct lines to lots more teams. The problems don't get solved, they can actually spread and get amplified across your product development efforts. So scaling can help communication, but only if you've got healthy, functional product teams to begin with.
Got it. So it's not an automatic fix. It depends heavily on the maturity of the individual product teams.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is clarifying.
Yeah.
We've talked about what scaling Agile means in product management, why people do it, the misconceptions. Now, let's get practical. You mentioned some rules of the road for doing it well. What's the first one? You said you can't scale nothing.
Yes, rule number one, you can't scale nothing. And this is so fundamental, especially when managing products and services. You just can't build this complex, interconnected system of scaled product delivery on a wobbly base.
So what does that solid base look like?
It means your individual product teams need to be genuinely good at the Agile basics, actually proficient in things like Scrum or Kanban, whatever they're using, but also, critically, understanding how to define product value, how to slice work effectively so they can actually deliver value iteratively.
And leadership. Where do they fit in?
Oh, leadership buy-in is huge. They need to genuinely understand and support the Agile values, focusing on customer outcomes, embracing iteration, adapting based on feedback for the product. If leaders are still stuck in a purely command and control or output-focused mindset, it creates massive friction for product teams trying to work iteratively.
Does that mean leaders need to be Agile experts from day one?
Not necessarily right away. Sometimes you might need a bit of a translation layer initially, people who can bridge the gap between the product team's iterative work and leadership's need for forecasting or reporting. But eventually, everyone needs to speak a common language centered on delivering customer value for the product or service.
And underlying all that?
Trust. Psychological safety. Without that culture where teams feel safe to experiment, to try things, maybe even fail sometimes and learn from it, Agile just withers, especially when you try to scale it across multiple product areas.
Okay, so before you even think about safe or less or whatever for your product portfolio, you need to look inward. Are our product teams actually good at the basics? Is leadership really on board with this way of managing products? Do we have trust? How do you figure that out?
That's where things like organizational readiness assessments are useful. They help you get an honest picture of where your product teams actually are. What are the strengths? Where are the gaps in skills and mindset, maybe even in the tools and infrastructure needed for iterative product development?
So know thyself, basically, before you try to grow.
Exactly, because trying to roll out a big scaling framework without proper training for your product managers and teams, or without the right tools to support cross-team collaboration on product backlogs, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, you just overwhelm teams who are maybe still struggling with basic Scrum for their own product.
Totally. They get buried under new processes before they've mastered the old ones. It's much better to start small, maybe pilot scaling ideas with a couple of related product teams, learn, adapt, and grow outwards from there based on success.
Build on strength. Makes sense.
Uh,
Okay, rule number 2. Scaling has a magnifying effect. Tell us about that in the context of managing multiple products or services with Agile.
Right. Remember, we talked about communication. When you scale Agile effectively across product lines, you're creating more connections, more direct interaction between teams working on different parts of the value stream.
It sounds good.
And it is good when the underlying elements are strong. Things like collaboration, adaptability, quick feedback loops across products, those can scale really positively. You can see huge improvements in how fast you deliver value across the board.
But the flip side.
The flip side is that scaling also magnifies the weaknesses, the dysfunctions. That product team with shaky communication skills we mentioned, put them in a big multi-team planning event for the overall product strategy, and they can suddenly become a drag on everyone.
So that minor issue within one team now impacts the bigger product picture.
Precisely. Or maybe you have leaders who aren't quite comfortable with the collaborative, iterative nature of Agile product development. Their discomfort can create conflict when scaled up. Siloed thinking within one product team can become entrenched across multiple product lines if the scaling approach doesn't actively break those silos down.
It's like putting everything under a microscope, or maybe a megaphone.
Yeah, a megaphone is a good analogy. Scaling doesn't fix the problems, it just makes them louder and potentially more damaging across your product portfolio.
And this can cause other issues too. like straining relationships.
Definitely. People get frustrated with new processes they aren't ready for or dependencies that suddenly become very visible and hard to manage. There's also a real danger of shifting focus purely to output, just churning out more features across all products instead of staying focused on the actual outcomes you want for your customers and the business.
So you could end up efficiently delivering lots of features for products that nobody actually wants or uses.
Sadly, yes. If that core Agile principle of value-driven product management isn't solid at the team level, scaling just helps you do the wrong things faster and on a bigger scale. That's why dealing with those deficiencies before scaling is critical. Otherwise, you're just amplifying the noise.
Okay, point taken. Fix the foundations before you build a bigger house. Now, rule number 3 sounds, well, a bit surprising. Avoid scaling if possible. Why would you say that if the goal is to spread the benefits of Agile product management?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But the idea here is that many of the goals people have when they think about scaling better alignment between product teams, managing dependencies, clearer communication can often be achieved through simpler means, especially early on.
Like what?
Well, think about those big formal alignment meetings common in scaling frameworks. They can be incredibly time-consuming and expensive, pulling lots of people from different product teams away from their core work.
Right, the overhead cost.
Exactly. Can you achieve the needed coordination differently? Maybe just having product owners or scrum masters from related product teams meet regularly. Maybe really improving how you use existing events like sprint reviews to bring stakeholders and leaders into the loop on product progress and get feedback across boundaries.
So look for lower overhead solutions first.
Yes. Explore ways to enhance communication and collaboration between your existing product teams before you jump to implementing a whole new complex scaling layer.
And you might find
Look what?
that you don't need the big framework.
You might. Some organizations might discover that by strengthening those inter-team connections and communication flows for their product development, they can get the results they need without the full complexity and cost of formal scaling framework.
Interesting. So delaying scaling isn't just about waiting until you're ready. It might actually be more efficient.
It absolutely can be. It lets you build that foundational strength, that agile maturity within your product teams at a more manageable pace. And that maturity makes any future scaling effort, if you still decide you need it, much more likely to succeed.
In using things like sprint reviews effectively across teams helps build that shared understanding needed for scaling later.
Precisely. It gets stakeholders and leadership more familiar with the iterative nature of agile product development, builds trust, improves transparency about what different product teams are working on. That groundwork is invaluable. The main point is focus on delivering customer value effectively. Don't scale just for the sake of saying you've scaled Agile.
That's a fantastic point. Focus on the outcome value, not just implementing a process.
Yep.
Okay, so if an organization weighs all this and decides, yes, scaling our Agile approach to product and service management is the right move, what should they expect? What's realistic?
I think the biggest thing is understanding it's a significant undertaking. It's not a quick fix. It requires real investment time, effort, resources, and genuine commitment from leadership right down to the product teams.
We're not talking about a weekend workshop then.
Definitely not. Historically, a full Agile transformation involving scaling across product lines could easily be a multi-year journey. Now, maybe things like AI are helping accelerate parts of it, but you're still looking at a substantial commitment.
So patience is key.
Patience and realistic expectations. Set achievable milestones. Plan for iterative improvement of the scaling process itself. You need proper training that's specifically geared towards scaled Agile product management, the right tools to support that cross-team work, and crucially, creating an environment where product teams can experiment, learn, maybe stumble a bit, and adapt without fear.
It sounds like the scaling journey itself needs to be managed in an Agile way.
That's a great way to put it. It's about continuous learning and adaptation, not just for the products, but for the way the organization manages the creation and delivery of those products. You grow from the basics within the teams outwards.
So it really circles back to those foundations, doesn't it? Get the basics right within your product teams first.
Absolutely. Scaling isn't magic, it just amplifies what's already there in how your product teams function. Focus on building strong, healthy, agile product teams, tackle their weaknesses head on, and always look for the simplest effective solution before adding complexity.
This has been incredibly helpful, really drilling down into the realities of scaling Agile for product and service management, understanding the why, the pitfalls, and especially those rules of the road. Don't scale nothing. Scaling magnifies. Avoid if possible feels crucial.
Glad it was useful. It's about being intentional and prepared, understanding it's a journey that builds on success at the team level.
Excellent. And if you, listening, want to explore more about building those strong Agile foundations for your product teams, the ones we've talked about being so critical, definitely check out the links in the description. We've put some valuable resources there to help you manage your products and services more effectively on your Agile journey. Thanks so much for joining us on the Deep Dive.